Imagine walking into your favorite cafe, expecting a warm, welcoming environment where you can grab a bite, enjoy a drink, and escape the rush of daily life. But what if everything you thought you knew about that place, and the people who work there, suddenly shattered in a single unexpected moment? You see, this story begins with something that might seem like a small incident at first, a momentary slip-up or a minor altercation between a waitress and a customer. But what happens next? What if I told you that this incident spirals into something much bigger, something that no one could have predicted, and the response of the employer takes the situation to a whole new level? You won't believe the twists and turns this story is about to take. And trust me, you won't want to miss the shocking aftermath. Stick with me, because what's coming next will leave you speechless, questioning everything you know about customer service, employee rights, and, well, human nature itself. Now, let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you saw something happening right in front of you and you couldn't quite believe it was real? Maybe you've been the one to witness someone getting treated unfairly at work, or perhaps you've been on the receiving end of an unfair judgment or punishment. If you have, you're not alone, and this story will resonate deeply with you. Today, we're diving into the world of service workers, the people who make our lives easier, even when we're too busy to appreciate them. But this isn't just about a customer and a waitress. It's about power, control, and how something as small as a mistake can suddenly put someone's livelihood on the line. So, how did we get here? How did something that seemed like just a bad moment between a customer and an employee turn into an all-out battle between a waitress and her employer? Stick around, because the next part of this story is going to blow your mind. This isn't just about one person facing consequences for something they may have said or done wrong. No, this is about a response, one so extreme that it has the entire community talking, sharing, and debating. How far is too far when it comes to holding employees accountable for their actions? What happens when an employer decides to take things to the next level, pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable and leaving everyone around them in shock? This video is not only about the incident that sparked the outrage, but it's about the ripple effects that continue to unfold, impacting more than just the waitress and the employer. The entire town is watching. And the big question is, who's really at fault here? Is the employer justified in their actions, or are they crossing a line that they should never have gone near? I know you're eager to hear the details, but I'm not going to get all the way just yet. Not yet. In fact, the real twist comes when you hear what the employer does next. You won't believe how they responded to Backlash. They say that every action has a reaction, but sometimes the reactions we don't expect have the power to change everything. So, what happens when a business leader makes a move that no one saw coming? How does a seemingly small issue lead to chaos, confusion, and conflict? Get ready for some serious drama, because what happens next will challenge your expectations, break your assumptions, and leave you wondering, did this really just happen? But before I dive into the details, I need to ask you something. How many of you have ever felt like an employee didn't deserve the treatment they got, whether it was from a customer or, even worse, from their employer? Have you ever felt that pit in your stomach when you see someone standing up for their rights, only to be shut down in front of everyone? I bet you've seen this before, and I bet, like me, you've wondered, why doesn't someone do something about this? Well, this is one of those stories where someone did, and the fallout was like nothing anyone could have predicted. But here's the kicker. It's not just about a waitress facing a backlash. It's not even about a simple conflict between two parties. What makes this story so gripping, so intense, is what happens after the dust settles. The way the situation evolves is jaw-dropping. The way the employer reacts and the decisions they make, each one only adds fuel to the fire. So, as you listen closely to every detail, remember this. Nothing is as it seems, and just when you think you figured it out, there's more. So, here's the million-dollar question. Can a single response from an employer make or break the future of their business? Can one small incident, blown out of proportion, lead to a monumental shift in how we view fairness, justice, and accountability in the workplace? It all starts with a simple act, but trust me, what follows will have you glued to your screen, and you'll want to know the answer to this burning question. As we dig deeper into this shocking tale, you'll see that nothing is ever as simple as it appears at first glance. The waitress, the customer, the employer. They're all players in a much bigger story, one that reflects the very nature of work, relationships, and human dynamics. But most importantly, it's a story about standing up for what's right and the power of decisions that can change lives in an instant. I know you're dying to know what happens next, and you will, but hold tight because this ride is just getting started. There's so much more to uncover about how this event escalated into something that took everyone by surprise. And as I unravel the twists, you'll begin to see how it all connects and why this story is resonating with so many people right now. So, stay with me, because I promise, the answers you've been waiting for are just around the corner. But before we jump into the shocking reveal, let's take a moment to consider. Could you or someone you know have been caught in the crossfire of a situation like this? How would you react if you were faced with the same pressures, the same scrutiny, and the same decisions? Stick around, because I guarantee what's about to unfold will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about fairness, loyalty, and what really goes down behind closed doors. And I'll tell you right now, you're not going to want to miss the bombshell that's coming. So, what happens when one small incident triggers a chain reaction that's impossible to stop? What happens when the truth comes to light and the actions of a single person and the response of an employer turn everything upside down? Stay tuned. You won't want to miss the next chapter. Trust me, it's a story that'll stay with you long after you hit play. As we dive deeper into this tangled story, it's important to understand the context that led to the explosive incident that put everything in motion. To truly grasp the magnitude of what's unfolding, we need to go back to the very beginning. Picture a small, bustling cafe nestled in the heart of a suburban town, the kind of place where locals stop by for their morning coffee, share their gossip, and find comfort in the routine. The staff is friendly. The customers are familiar, and the cafe's owner, a seasoned entrepreneur, had always prided himself on creating a warm and welcoming atmosphere. For years, it had been an unspoken rule that everyone who worked there was part of the extended family. But that all changed one fateful evening when the waitress at the center of the storm made a single mistake, a mistake that seemed harmless at first, but set off a chain reaction that no one could have predicted. She had worked at this cafe for over 2 years, and everyone knew her as someone who could handle the pressure of the busiest shifts. From a distance, it might have seemed like she was a model employee, quick, efficient, and always with a smile on her face. But behind the scenes, things weren't as perfect as they appeared. Her personal life was in turmoil. She was going through a rough patch with her family, trying to juggle the demands of her job with the weight of her responsibilities at home. Financial stress, relationship problems, and the strain of working long hours had all taken a toll on her mental health. Yet, like so many others, she pushed through, putting on a brave face to the customers, always eager to please. The regulars knew her well, and many had become friendly with her over time. They would chat, share laughs, and occasionally, she would confide in them about her struggles. But this particular night, was different. The cafe had been packed more than usual, with the dinner rush in full swing. The pressure was on, and the air was thick with the clatter of dishes, the hum of conversation, and the buzz of the espresso machine working overtime. It was the kind of environment that could push anyone to their limits. That's when the incident happened. A customer, a regular who'd been coming to the cafe for months, made a snide remark. Something offhand, something that could easily have been overlooked. But in that moment, everything changed. The waitress, already frazzled and mentally exhausted from a long shift, snapped. Her response was sharp, more than a little confrontational, and definitely unexpected. It wasn't that she meant to escalate things. In fact, she probably didn't even realize the severity of her words until it was too late. But the customer took offense, and what followed was a heated exchange that quickly spiraled out of control. The incident could have ended there, with a simple apology and a return to normalcy. But in this case, that wasn't how it played out. The customer, feeling disrespected and humiliated, took to social media, posting about the confrontation for all to see. And as we all know, once something hits the internet, it's out of your hands. The post quickly went viral, attracting attention from local news outlets and fueling a firestorm of outrage. People began to pick sides, some defending the waitress, others condemning her behavior. But no one, not even the people closest to the cafe, could have anticipated what came next. The employer's response. The owner, known for his typically laid-back attitude, had always been a man who valued loyalty and a sense of community. But when the post started circulating, he felt the pressure mounting. As a small business owner, his livelihood depended on keeping customers happy, maintaining a positive reputation, and ensuring his employees didn't jeopardize the cafe's standing in the community. So, when the storm of criticism started to intensify, he made a decision that would shake the very foundation of everything he had built. He sided with the customer. Instead of offering support to his employee, he took a harsh stance. He issued a public statement, condemning the waitress's behavior and promising swift action. This, of course, only fanned the flames of controversy, making the situation even worse. The aftermath was immediate and severe. The waitress, already devastated by the viral post and the customer's reaction, found herself facing a backlash from her co-workers, the media, and the community. Some of her colleagues, many of whom had worked with her for years, expressed disappointment in her actions. Others, however, were more sympathetic, understanding the strain she had been under and the circumstances that led to the confrontation. But in the eyes of the owner, there was no room for sympathy. He made it clear that her job was on the line, and he wasn't willing to tolerate any behavior that could hurt the cafe's reputation. The waitress, now caught in the eye of a storm she had never seen coming, was left to fend for herself. But here's where things take another unexpected turn. The waitress didn't back down. Instead of submitting to the pressure and apologizing for something she didn't fully believe was her fault, she decided to fight back. She reached out to local journalists, shared her side of the story, and even launched a social media campaign to get her voice heard. In an ironic twist, she quickly found herself becoming a symbol of resistance, a hero to some and a villain to others. Her story resonated with people who had been wronged in their own workplaces, people who had faced harsh treatment from employers, and people who had felt the sting of public humiliation. As the story gained more traction, the cafe's reputation began to crumble. Loyal customers who had once frequented the establishment started to question their support. The viral post and the owner's callous response had created a rift, and people weren't so sure they want to continue supporting a business that seemed willing to throw its own employees under the bus. Meanwhile, the waitress's story spread across the internet like wildfire, and soon she had amassed a following of supporters, each one eager to see justice served. But with every step she took toward reclaiming her dignity, she found herself facing even more obstacles, each one more challenging than the last. The tensions only grew as the media spotlight on the incident intensified. Other service workers, inspired by her defiance, began sharing their own stories of mistreatment and unfair treatment at the hands of employers. The debate over worker rights and employer responsibility became a central topic of discussion, sparking conversations across social media, news outlets, and even in the halls of local government. But despite the growing support, the waitress's battle was far from over. To make matters even more complicated, another layer of mystery emerged. Behind the scenes, it became clear that there were other forces at play, forces with their own agendas and motivations. Rumors began to circulate that the cafe's owner wasn't as innocent as he appeared. Some claimed that he had been involved in other shady business dealings in the past, while others suggested that his decision to publicly condemn the waitress wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. Was there more to this story than met the eye? Was the owner truly acting in the best interest of his business, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? As the waitress continued to navigate the storm, she found herself entangled in a web of lies, manipulation, and hidden truths. The more she uncovered about the cafe's inner workings, the more questions arose. Could she trust the people around her? Was she being used as a pawn in a much larger game? With each new revelation, the stakes grew higher and the tension continued to mount. Every twist seemed to bring her closer to the truth, but at the same time, it only pushed her further into danger. And then, just when it seemed like things couldn't get any more complicated, a shocking turn of events took place that no one saw coming. The owner made a decision that would alter the course of everything. But was it a move in his favor, or was it the beginning of the end for his cafe? As the waitress continued to fight for what she believed was right, She would soon discover that nothing in this story was as simple as it seemed. The true conflict was just beginning. So where does this all lead? How does the story unfold from here? And more importantly, what happens when the people you thought you could trust turn out to be the ones you need to watch out for? Keep watching, because the story is far from over, and the next chapter is about to take everything to a place you never expected. Buckle up, because the twists and turns are only getting started. The waitress continued her battle. She quickly realized that the fight wasn't just about a single confrontation in the cafe anymore. It had become a symbol of something much larger. The backlash had taken on a life of its own, turning her from a disgruntled employee into a reluctant hero of sorts. Her story had struck a chord with people all over the country, particularly those who felt that the system was stacked against them. The viral post had sparked debates about worker rights, employer responsibility, and the thin line between personal accountability and public perception. What had started as a small spat over a customer complaint had morphed into a full-blown scandal that was beginning to divide the town, if not the entire region. The atmosphere at the cafe had shifted dramatically. The once tight-knit team of employees, who had shared inside jokes and helped each other through tough shifts, now found themselves caught in a deepening rift. The waitress, once a valued member of the team, was now an outcast of some, while others rallied behind her, eager to show their support. The air was thick with tension, and it seemed like every move the owner made only made the situation worse. His decision to side with the customer had alienated more than just his employees. It had also alienated the loyal customers who had frequented the cafe for years. Some of them took to social media, questioning the integrity of a business that would so easily throw its employees under the bus. The cafe's Yelp reviews tanked, and the once constant flow of regulars began to dwindle. But while the cafe's public image was deteriorating, the waitress was not the only one feeling the pressure. The cafe owner, too, was under fire. His business was slipping through his fingers, and he knew it. For the first time in years, he was forced to confront the reality that the decisions he had made in the heat of the moment might not have been as calculated as he had believed. The viral outrage that followed the incident had made it clear that his stance had been a mistake. But admitting fault was something he wasn't ready to do. Not yet, at least. Behind closed doors, he began to meet with his advisors, trying to figure out a way to salvage the business without further damaging his reputation. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that the situation was spiraling out of control, and the only way out might be to cut his losses and distance himself from the incident altogether. Yet, despite the growing chaos, the waitress remained determined to see this through. She wasn't just fighting for her job anymore. She was fighting for her dignity. What had started as a simple exchange had turned into a quest for justice. She had never anticipated that standing up for herself would turn into something so monumental. But as the online campaign gained momentum, it became clear that she had touched a nerve. People from all walks of life, from fellow service workers to everyday citizens, began to reach out to her, offering words of encouragement and sharing their own stories of mistreatment. She realized that her story wasn't just about a single incident in a cafe. It was about the larger systemic issues that workers across the country face on a daily basis. However, the deeper she dug into her own story, the more questions began to surface. She had started out trying to defend herself and clear her name, but as she read through the comments and messages pouring in from supporters, she noticed something strange. Many of them seemed to know more than they should. Some mentioned specific details about her life that she had never shared publicly. Others hinted at things that made her feel uncomfortable, as though someone had been watching her every move. She initially dismissed these thoughts as paranoia, but as time went on, the feeling only intensified. It wasn't just random supporters anymore. There were people she knew who seemed to have insider knowledge about her personal life, things that only a few select individuals could know. The sense of being watched, of being monitored, began to gnaw at her. In an unexpected twist, she received an anonymous tip from someone claiming to have inside information about the cafe's operations. The person, who refused to reveal their identity, told her that there was more going on behind the scenes than she could imagine. The cafe's owner, it seemed, had a hidden agenda. There were rumors that he had been involved in shady business dealings, financial mismanagement, and even some illegal activities that were being swept under the rug. The more the waitress thought about it, the more the pieces began to fall into place. Could it be that the owner's harsh response to the incident wasn't just about protecting the cafe's reputation? Was it possible that he was trying to cover up something much more significant? As the waitress delved deeper into these rumors, she found herself pulled into a world of secrets and lies that she had never expected to be a part of. What started as a battle over a minor confrontation had quickly escalated into a full-fledged investigation into the cafe's inner workings. She began to question everything she thought she knew about her former employer. His motives, his business practices, and his sudden, over-the-top reaction to the viral post all seemed to be part of a much larger puzzle, one that, if solved, could expose some seriously dangerous truths. But the deeper she dug, the more dangerous the situation became. The cafe's owner was no longer the only one keeping secrets. The waitress began to notice strange behavior from her colleagues, some of whom had once been her closest friends. She overheard hushed conversations and saw suspicious interactions between certain employees and the owner. One evening, she caught sight of something that sent a chill down her spine, a confidential-looking document being passed between the owner and one of his trusted employees. The document, she realized, was about her. It was a file detailing her personal history, her work performance, and, most troubling of all, her financial situation. It was clear now that she wasn't just being targeted for a role in a viral incident. There was something much darker at play. As she pieced together the fragmented clues, a horrifying thought crossed her mind. What if the entire thing had been orchestrated from the start? What if the confrontation with the customer, the viral post, and the owner's response had all been part of a larger plan to discredit her, to ruin her reputation, and to get rid of her once and for all? Could the cafe's owner, in his desperation to protect his business, have gone so far as to create a scandal that would force her out? And if that were the case, what else was he hiding? With her suspicions growing by the day, the waitress realized that she was no longer just fighting for her job. She was fighting for her life. The stakes had risen, and now, every step she took brought her closer to the truth, while simultaneously pushing her into even greater danger. The more she uncovered, the more she realized that the cafe's owner was willing to do whatever it took to protect his empire, even if it meant destroying the lives of those around him. At this point, it became clear that there was no turning back. The waitress knew that if she wanted to expose the truth, she would have to take risks, big risks. She would have to confront the owner head-on, gather the evidence she needed, and be prepared to go public with everything she had learned. But as the days went by, the tension continued to build. The owner was watching her every move, and she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. Every phone call, every email, every conversation felt like it was being monitored. The closer she got to the truth, the more she realized just how far-reaching conspiracy was. And just when she thought she had uncovered the full extent of the owner's deceit, another bombshell dropped. The cafe wasn't the only business involved in the shady dealings. The waitress discovered that the owner was connected to a much larger network of corrupt businesses, all of which were linked by a web of financial transactions, kickbacks, and backdoor deals. The conspiracy went far beyond the walls of the cafe, and it was even more dangerous than she had imagined. Now, the stakes were higher than ever. The waitress wasn't just fighting to clear her name. She was fighting to expose a criminal enterprise that had been operating right under everyone's noses. The clock was ticking, and with each passing day, the danger grew. But as the tension reached its boiling point, something unexpected happened. The cafe owner made a move that no one saw coming, a move that would change everything. And just when it seemed like the waitress had everything figured out, the biggest twist of all was about to unfold. Pushing the story to a place no one had expected, as the waitress continued to uncover layer after layer of deception, she found herself facing the reality of the situation with sharp clarity that cut through the fog of uncertainty that had clouded her judgment for so long. The web of lies and corruption surrounding the cafe owner had grown to unimaginable proportions. The one small-scale dispute had expanded into a sprawling criminal network that seemed to touch every corner of the town. From illicit business dealings to shadowy connections with powerful individuals, the cafe was merely a front for something much more dangerous. She had gone from being a simple server caught in the middle of a customer dispute to someone on the front lines of exposing a massive conspiracy. But as the weight of the truth began to settle on her shoulders, she knew that the time for hesitation had passed. The stakes were no longer just about clearing her name. This was a battle for justice, for the safety of everyone who had been unknowingly caught up in the cafe owner's web of lies. The pressure was mounting. Every move she made was being watched, every conversation monitored. The owner, realizing that his operation was on the verge of being exposed, had grown more desperate. He had pulled out all the stops, hiring private investigators to track her every step, threatening her family, and even using his influence to turn certain colleagues against her. Despite all of this, the waitress remained resolute, knowing that she couldn't back down now. She had come too far, and the truth was within her grasp. Armed with a collection of carefully gathered evidence, including financial records, recordings, and a network of confidential informants, she was ready to take her findings to the authorities. But just when it seemed like she was closing in on the truth, an unexpected twist threw everything into disarray. The cafe owner, in a final, desperate bid to cover his tracks, made a stunning move. He filed a lawsuit against her. He accused her of defamation, claiming that her actions and accusations had damaged his reputation and his business beyond repair. It was a bold move, and it immediately placed the waitress on the defensive. The lawsuit was a strategic attempt to discredit her and derail her efforts to expose the truth. It was a move that many in the legal community believed would be difficult to overcome, especially given the cafe owner's vast resources and powerful connections. For a brief moment, it seemed like the waitress had lost. The legal battle threatened to drag on for months, if not years, and the weight of the accusations against her seemed impossible to shake. She felt like she was being suffocated under the pressure, as though every step she took was another misstep in a battle she couldn't win. The constant barrage of legal threats and harassment from the cafe owner's team of lawyers made it feel like there was no way out. But instead of giving in, the waitress chose to fight back. She realized that the lawsuit was just another tactic to intimidate her, to make her back down from her pursuit of justice. She wasn't about to let him win. Not now. Not after everything she had uncovered. With a renewed sense of determination, the waitress doubled down on her efforts. She reached out to a trusted lawyer, someone who had experience dealing with high-profile cases of corruption and defamation. Together, they began to build a counterattack, gathering even more evidence and finding ways to expose the cafe owner's illegal activities to the public. The legal battle was far from over, but she could sense the tide beginning to turn. With every passing day, the walls around the cafe owner began to close in. But then, in a shocking turn of events, a new piece of evidence surfaced that completely changed the trajectory of the case. One of the waitress's former colleagues, someone who had once been loyal to the owner, came forward with a bombshell revelation. This employee, who had been silently complicit in the cafe owner's scheme for years, had a change of heart. They had witnessed firsthand the owner's illegal activities and had secretly kept records of their own. They couldn't live with the guilt anymore and had decided to do the right thing. This new witness, armed with undeniable proof of the owner's criminal enterprise, became the key to exposing the entire operation. As the evidence piled up, the waitress's legal team began to gain the upper hand. The cafe owner, now facing multiple criminal charges and an ever-growing list of lawsuits, found himself cornered. The facade of his business empire began to crumble as more and more people came forward with stories of their own mistreatment at his hands. The waitress, once the target of his manipulation and deceit, had become the catalyst for a revolution of sorts, a movement that not only exposed the wrongdoings of one man, but also shed light on the widespread injustice that workers across the country faced every day. The climax of the story came when the cafe owner, realizing that he had no way out, made one final, desperate attempt to salvage his reputation. He tried to bribe the authorities, offering them large sums of money to drop the charges and dismiss the case. But the waitress, who had been watching from the sidelines, knew that this was her moment. With the full support of the public and a mounting legal case against him, she took to social media, releasing the final piece of evidence that sealed the deal. In a matter of hours, the story went viral, and the cafe owner was exposed for fraud he truly was. The public outrage was swift and unforgiving, and within days, the authorities moved in to arrest him. His empire collapsed, and the waitress, once an unknown figure in a small cafe, became a symbol of courage and resilience. But even as the story seemed to reach its resolution, a final twist emerged. The waitress, now hailed as a hero, was approached by a mysterious benefactor who revealed that they had been following her journey from the very beginning. This person had been silently supporting her all along, providing her with the resources she needed to continue her fight. They had helped her gather evidence, track down witnesses, and navigate the complicated legal landscape. But who was this benefactor, and why had they chosen to remain in the shadows? The answer, it seemed, was even more shocking than the story itself. The benefactor, as it turned out, was someone from the waitress's past, someone she never expected to be involved in the case. This person had been watching her, supporting her in ways she hadn't realized, and now they were ready to step forward and reveal their true identity. The twist left the waitress and the audience stunned. What began as a fight for justice had turned into something far more complex, a story of hidden connections, unexpected alliances, and a web of secrets that stretched far beyond what anyone had imagined. As the story came to a close, the waitress stood tall, having faced down her adversaries, exposed the truth, and ultimately come out victorious. But the journey had changed her in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. The fight for justice had taken its toll, but it had also given her a newfound strength. She had not only uncovered conspiracy that affected so many others, but she had also discovered her own inner power. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.